Houston Public Media's politics and government reporter, Andrew Schneider. I'm Ernie Manous. We'll also discuss the latest plans for NRG Park and the Astrodome with Chandler France, who covers money and business of sports for the Houston Business Journal. Plus, a visit with José R. Ralat, the James Beard Award-winning taco editor for Texas Monthly. He'll break down his report on the best taco spots in Texas, 4 of which are right here in the Houston area. And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's televised cabinet meeting is underway. He is addressing aggressive immigration enforcement in the U.S., tax cuts, and ongoing U.S. attempts to get Iran to negotiate an end to hostilities and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's facing mounting pressure at home to get Iran to reopen that key waterway where stalled shipments are part of the reason people are paying higher energy prices. NPR's Frank Ordonez reports that over the weekend, the president said a groundbreaking deal with Iran was imminent. Then a day later, U.S. forces attacked Iranian speedboats suspected of attempting to lay mines, continuing to send mixed signals about ending the war.
He was almost actually taking a victory lap, thanking intermediaries for their help with negotiations. And then, of course, you had the blowback from Republicans in Israel. I would say that this was the most emphatic he's been about an upcoming deal, but it's happened before. I mean, last month, Trump said they were very close to a deal and that the two sides agreed to even dig up Iran's enriched uranium. The reality is, while the president has repeatedly projected this kind of optimism, there is yet to be anything really concrete or durable toward a resolution.
That's Frank Ordonez reporting. The Israeli military is warning residents in one of Lebanon's biggest cities to leave. NPR's Jana Raff reports the alert applies to nearly all of Tyre.
Israeli forces have pushed further into Lebanon and escalated their attacks since Tuesday, killing dozens of people, including women and children. The Israeli prime minister says they intend to crush Iran-backed Hezbollah. In a new warning, Israel told residents of Tyre, the second biggest city in southern Lebanon, to evacuate immediately or risk being killed. The warning covers tens of thousands of residents, including in Palestinian refugee camps. More than 1.2 million people have already been displaced by fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, leaving many families with nowhere to go. Jana Raff, NPR News, Beirut.
For the first time since 2013, there will be a new U.S. Senator for Texas after incumbent John Cornyn was defeated by Attorney General Ken Paxton in yesterday's primary. The Texas Newsroom's Blaise Gainey reports a Democrat in the race, James Tallarico, is already out with anti-Paxton messaging.
Minutes after the winner was cleared, Tallarico's campaign sent an email out featuring a new video where he highlights Paxton's impeachment.
3 years ago, Ken Paxton was impeached by his own party for using his public office to enrich himself and his donors at the expense of the people.
Paxton also quickly came out with his own bar, calling Tallarico the most well-funded radical Democrat in America.
That's Blaise Gainey reporting on yesterday's runoff. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Texas voters decided several high-profile runoff races Tuesday night, including a nationally watched Republican U.S. Senate primary, as you've been hearing on the national news portion. The Texas Newsroom's Lucio Vasquez has a full report.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton defeated incumbent Senator John Cornyn in the Republican runoff for U.S. Senate. Paxton will face Democrat James Tallarico in the general election this fall. In the race for Attorney General, Republican State Senator Mays Middleton defeated U.S. Representative Chip Roy. Middleton will be running against State Senator Nathan Johnson, who won the Democrats' runoff for AG on Tuesday. Democrat Vicki Goodwin also won her party's runoff for lieutenant governor. She'll challenge longtime incumbent Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in November. I'm Lucio Vasquez in Houston.
Meanwhile, Letitia Plummer will advance to November as the Democratic nominee for Harris County Judge. She celebrated with her supporters last night.
If this is what God wants for us, I promise you, I'm going to be the best Harris County judge for the people that you have ever seen.
Bexar County Sheriff Johnny Garcia has won the Democratic primary runoff for Texas's 35th congressional district. He defeated Maureen Galindo in a race that became one of the most closely watched Democratic contests in Texas. Stay here. We'll have continuing election result coverage for you on News 88.7. Taking a look at sports, the Rangers downed the Stros 10-7 last night. The two will go at it again at 7:05 this evening from Arlington. And checking your weather, we've got a 60% chance of showers and thunderstorms today, a high of 80 degrees. Tonight's going to be mostly cloudy with a low around 72. Right now, it's overcast, 75 degrees on the UH campus. Get more news and information. Go to HoustonPublicMedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian. News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from Strawberry.me, whose career coaches offer professional support to help people get unstuck, gain clarity, and move forward, whether advancing in a current role or choosing a new direction altogether. More at strawberry.me/public.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston.
And good morning there, Houston. And hello, Ernie Manous here with you. We had a very busy night last night as we watched the returns come in from the much-hyped runoff election to find out who would be the final candidates running in many races that we'll be voting on in November. We're going to dig into all of those in just a moment. But really what I want to know is, did you vote last night, or did you vote yesterday? Did you watch the results? Were you surprised by what you saw? Do you have an opinion on the candidates that will now be stepping forward? Give us a call and share with us at 713-440-8870. Maybe even what was your biggest surprise of the night? We're going to be talking about all of that in just a moment, but coming up on the show today, I want to tell you some of the topics we're covering. We're going to look at what it means when corporations say they're moving their headquarters to Texas. Does that really mean more for us on the ground? We'll find out about that. Also, they have taken a peek. They have found the best taquerias in the state of Texas. And good news, 4 of them are right here in the Houston area. We're going to find out what those are and what was the criteria. Also, got bad news for you. One of the plans for the Astrodome, just blow it off the face of the earth. Could that be real? We're going to find out about that too. And Stages is going to be here talking about their new upcoming season. But the big story of the day, as we all know, is the results from last night's runoff election. And no one could be better to sit in with me than politics and government reporter Andrew Schneider. I should say, how are you doing? You've been up all night, basically.
I have been up all night. It wasn't intentional. I went home after last night's panel discussion, wrote up a two-way feature that was supposed to run and did run on NPR early this morning, went to bed, closed my eyes, and nothing happened. And so I'm running on adrenaline at this point.
Well, we won't try too hard on you today, but it was just a surprise in some areas, eye-opening in other areas. The one that we got the most attention pointed toward locally, I would have to say, was the Harris County race for judge.
Absolutely. The Democratic Harris County race for judge, all the polling that we'd been seeing for months suggested that former Houston Mayor Annise Parker, that it was her race to lose, that she was likely to win by double digits. That is not what happened at all. Instead, former Houston City Council member Letitia Plummer eked out a win by a little over 2 percentage points. And we saw some interesting analysis of this race last night by former Harris County Judge Ed Emmett. He suggested that what had happened was that a lot of the people that came out that were motivated to come out to vote by the race in the Democratic race for the Texas 18th congressional district, also were similarly motivated to vote in the Harris County judge's race, and they overwhelmingly voted for Plummer. I think another factor that may have played into this, just based on what we saw last night, there was a theme of generational shift that cut across several different races. It cut across the Republican Senate race. It certainly manifested in the Texas 18th congressional district on the Democratic side, and I think it may have played a role in the Harris County judge's race on the Democratic side. Mayor Parker was a very highly thought of, very skilled political candidate. She served as mayor. Before that, she served as Houston City Controller. Before that, she served on the Houston City Council. But she is significantly older than Letitia Plummer is, and that may have played a role in people's desire for a changing of the guard.
Well, I'm curious, will that carry through, do you think, till November? Will the more youthful, fresh names on ballots win over more established ones that are left in these races?
It's difficult to say once you get to November. I mean, particularly when we're talking about the Harris County judge's race, the more seasoned candidate is also the Republican candidate. That's Orlando Sanchez. He's a former 3-term Harris County treasurer, previously served on Houston City Council. But we've got other factors that are at play. There's the whole question of the effect of Donald Trump and his popularity on the down ballot races. That's going to be affected by a lot of different things, not the least of which is the state of the economy. And there are a lot of factors in play that suggest that Harris County could be heading, if not the state, could be heading for another blue wave year, similar to what we saw in 2018.
You mentioned Trump. That takes us up to the Senate race. You're also talking about that with the blue wave. And we saw Paxton beat Cornyn.
Right. Well, this is something that a lot of voters that I spoke with over the course of the past few months predicted in a way that some of the polling maybe did not. We're dealing with, as several of our commentators said last night, a relatively small slice of the electorate, a very highly motivated slice of the electorate that tends more towards the far end of the parties. We saw that with the progressive end of the Democratic spectrum and the MAGA end of the Republican spectrum. Paxton, for all the political baggage that he has carried over the years, has generally been very highly thought of by the rank and file Republican voters, and but it's worth remembering it was a small subset of those voters. I mean, John Cornyn in his concession speech made a point of saying something like 8% of the electorate had come out. Or the Republican voters had come out, and 60% of them had voted for his opponent. That's a very small number when we're talking about the totality of Republican and conservative voters in Texas.
A lot of people were expecting that at least to be a pretty tight race between Paxton and Cornyn, but then the Trump endorsement came along. Is that what made the shift, do you think?
It's an open question. We were actually talking about this morning on the with Geronimo Cortina and Brandon Rottinghouse on Houston Matters. The question is, it's sort of a chicken and the egg thing, which came first. There's a strong argument to be made that the people who were more likely to vote in the election in the Republican primary had already made up their minds before then. But there was also a poll that came out about a month ago that suggested that while Paxton might be in the lead, a Trump endorsement could certainly push him into a much more significant lead. So it's entirely possible that that played a role, if not the decisive role.
Speaking of the people, we invite you to call in and share your thoughts on everything we're talking about. And we do have a call on the line right now. It's 713-440-8870. I'm going to tell Andrew, I think your volume may be down on your headphone. There you go. Thank you. Let's take our first call. Sam from Sugar Land is on the line. Sam, what are your thoughts about what happened yesterday? Sam, you there with us? All right, I don't think Sam is there unless I just can't hear him. But we'll get back to you, Sam. Hold on a second. Sam was going to, as I understand it, Oh, Sam, are you there? Oh, I heard you for a second. Hello?
Yeah, hello, sir.
There you are. Is this Sam?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sam. Sorry, we had a little trouble connecting there. Sam, what's on your mind?
Yeah. No, I was trying to say that, all these polls and everything predicts various things. But the fact remains that Donald Trump is a very big force. And MAGA is a very good movement. And people are behind it for sure. Because every single candidate that he has endorsed or stood by has made a big difference in winning by a huge margin.
Well, Sam, I think that the information I've seen coming in supports what you're saying. I think it was Fox News that had a chart up that showed of all of the endorsements that Trump made, that 100% of them won. Does that sound possible, Andrew?
Well, I haven't seen the full list from Texas, but certainly, between Senator between the Senate race with Attorney General Ken Paxton and the two main Republican races for the House in Houston, where he weighed in. Both of those cases, it made a significant difference. The question is, whether this is a matter of him picking someone and propelling them to victory, or simply him being good at identifying likely winners in advance and putting his and aligning his name with them. He does like to pick winners.
Sam, thank you for calling and sharing with us. Yeah, Andrew, that's the other part of it. Like you were saying, this endorsement for Paxton came very late in the cycle. Was it that he was a kingmaker, or is he just really good at reading the tea leaves and saying, okay, this one looks like he's going to win, so I'm going to put my name there? Because he didn't earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting timing, because right up until the Friday before he endorsed Paxton, he was reluctant to name his choice. He kept he was speaking in a press gaggle on Air Force One, and he said, I'll make a decision fairly soon. I like them both. Yeah. The one thing that's important is that we defeat James Tallarico, because it's always difficult to know exactly what's going on in the decision-making process. What role Paxton himself might have played in this. There was some suggestion along the line that Paxton may have been putting pressure on Trump to, pointing to some of the polls, saying, "Look, I'm ahead. You want to get on the train before it leaves the station." But he was under a considerable amount of pressure from the other direction as well, particularly from leading Senate Republicans and leading Republican figures in Texas to either back corner or to stay out of the race.
Well, speaking of James Tallarico, he's going to be on the show tomorrow. You'll be hearing from him right here on Hello Houston as he visits the Houston area. Another question that came in online, and if you want to call us, 713-440-8870. Let us know what you think of the results. This question is for Andrew. This question is for you. It says, are there any numbers showing voter turnout? Curious to know which party had the biggest turnout.
I have not looked at the breakdown statewide. My understanding from what I've heard several other people say is that the Republican turnout was higher, and that if that's the case, that's would not be too surprising, because the Democrats had already picked their candidate in the Senate race back in March. So there was less of a motivation statewide for Democrats to get out and vote.
And it's true. Those marquee races are what often motivate. In our area, we had the Texas 18, which had a lot of press and a lot of attention. That motivates you to come out if you live in Texas 18. If you're a Republican, the Senate race was the big one that you were worried about and probably brought you out there, and which would explain why it was larger statewide for Republican turnout, if in fact that susses out to be true. The other part of it is those who vote in runoff primary elections. Each time you have another election narrowing it down, it seems to get less and less folks as they get more extreme. So you're going to get the more diehards and not the everyday voter. We should probably see a bigger turnout come November, would you guess?
I'd be shocked if it weren't.
Yeah, it's going to be big. I
think midterm elections, while they don't have the same turnout as presidential election years, they can be quite large, particularly when people are highly motivated, either because they like the person in the White House or they don't like the person in the White House. And it's common enough to say, well, Donald Trump isn't on the ticket, but you see the effect that Trump's endorsements have had, and it's inescapable that the midterm becomes a referendum on the person who's in the Oval Office.
We mentioned the Texas 18th race. So what did we learn there last night?
This was, I think, another example of what we were talking about before, where people were looking at their choices. They may have liked both candidates. A lot of the polling that we saw among Democrats suggested that they would have preferred to be able to send both Menifee and Green back to Congress, but they could only do that with one because the two incumbents were forced into the same district as a result of last year's congressional redistricting. And in spite of the fact that a large chunk of the new 18th district was packed in from Al Green's old 9th district, the large volume of people who came out to vote in the Democratic primary, preferred Menifee over Green by more than 2-1.
I would say I was surprised by that. At first, I thought when I saw early polling stuff, I thought Menifee had it. When then I realized that 75% of the new 18 was the old 9, then you start thinking, well, that's their incumbent. They know Al Green. He's going to – I was expecting a much closer race and maybe more time before we saw the answer. But goes back to, are people looking for a younger generational shift now?
Yeah, I mean, we would need some more detailed analysis of what actually happened, but I suspect one of the things that played a role in this is part of the reason Menifee didn't win outright in the first round was because Amanda Edwards, thank you. It's been a long day. Amanda Edwards was still on the ballot, even though she'd already withdrawn from the race by that point, having lost the January runoff special election. And she had also run on a platform of change. So you had a lot of people in the 18th district, as it was previously constituted, that had been without representation for the better part of a year because their previous member of Congress, Sylvester Turner, had died in office. And before him, the previous elected member of Congress, Sheila Jackson Lee, had also died in office. And these were both members of Congress that were in their 70s.
Yeah. Well, a good thing for the 18th is that the person they have currently in office is going to continue on after this term. The good thing for Christian Menifee is he doesn't have to run for an election for a little bit now because he's been in a lot of races going on. You're going to join me back in the next hour. When we do, I do want to check in on finding out what some of these stalwart elected officials will do next. Where do they go from here? A lot of people who thought they were still going back to their old jobs won't be, or the ones that were looking for new jobs. But before we do that, and before we go anywhere else, again, 713-440-8870. Chris from the Heights is on the line. Chris, what's on your mind?
Well, I was appalled at the low turnout. I wasn't totally surprised because, we said people are tired. But even in years where we don't have multiple elections, it still remains a problem. And I want to know what Andrew thinks we can do about it. It can work. It worked in this case to kind of escort out a few dinosaurs, but it can work. We've got to convince the Republicans it's worth their while because they're going to oppose it tooth and claw. So what does Andrew think that we could do?
Chris, great question. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, one of the things that that occurred to me that we're seeing in this case is voter fatigue. Definitely played a role.
Yeah,
it's difficult to overcome that. I think one way of doing that would be, well, let me put it this way: a lot of the things that could potentially be done to remedy this, the Democrats have tried locally, and the Republicans have decided statewide to ban. Yeah. So it's difficult for me to come up with any solutions on the spot. I wish I could think of some.
Yeah. I mean, some of the easy ones that we've chatted with when we had Tanisha Hudspeth on is maybe moving as many elections as possible into single days, like a point where a bunch of different elections take place. We had so many scattered elections. I think she said she did 8. Some people in our area voted 8 times since November.
Yeah, and that will definitely enhance the sense of voter fatigue.
Yeah, and I don't want to misrepresent saying that we were talking about getting rid of early voting. That's not what I meant.
No,
the period of time having more elections lumped together when we have them, but parties get in play there, runoffs get in play there. It becomes, and we have the unique situation of having to fill seats of people who had passed, and so that changes it too. It's going to be interesting to see. We've got a few months to rest our fingers from voting, and hopefully come November, voter fatigue will have wandered away a bit and we'll be rip-roaring and ready to go. And I hope you'll be rip-roaring and ready to go, Andrew, to join me back here at the top of the next hour to talk some more about all of this.
All right. I will see you shortly.
So keep your comments, questions, and your opinions coming in about the elections. We'll hit those at the top of the hour, but we got a whole lot more. Hello, Houston. Coming up, we're going to talk with Chandler France, who covers money and business of sports for the Houston Business Journal, about, oh my God, some of the latest plans for what's going to happen at NRG Park and the Astrodome. You're not going to want to miss this. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Meet Dio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
But not everyone can join us live at 9 a.m., and not every peeve occurs to you right then and there. That's okay. We welcome your gripes about life in Houston anytime at talk@houstonmatters.org.
In the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers are forcing Palestinian farmers from land their families have cultivated for generations.
They damage our life completely.
I'm Scott Detrow. We hear the story of one Palestinian pushed from his land and the Israeli settlers now swimming in its waters. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
You can hear that later today. It's on at 3 on News 88.7.
Trustworthy news is why you tune in every day. Become a new member by Friday, and you'll help us unlock $10,000. That goes right back into this station that you rely on. You can do that at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
From the ocean floor to the edge of the universe, PBS Science and Nature documentaries are here. Stream anytime on HPM Plus. Search HPM Plus on your smart and connected TVs.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
Okay, here we go. Houston's Astrodome, once called the eighth wonder of the world, is again at a crossroads. As leaders consider the future of NRG Park, the dome could face either, I hate to say it, demolition or redevelopment, raising questions about cost, historic preservation, and what Houstonians really want out of what remains of the Astrodome. Joining us now is Chandler France, who covers money and the business of sports for the Houston Business Journal. Chandler, welcome back to the program.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
I choke on the words when I even say demolition or blow it up. Is that really in play?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are two options here. And one of the things that my recent report looked at was as part of these ongoing lease negotiations and master planning processes at NRG Park, one of those two things is going to happen. It's going to be a demolition or it's going to be a redevelopment. And so a demolition is certainly in play. It's 50-50 right now, but nobody wants to hear demolition, especially the Houston natives, but it's certainly on the table right now.
Well, Houston natives and non-natives who are listening right now, you are welcome to join the conversation at 713-440-8870. Your connection to the Astrodome, what do you want to see happen there? And this word, demolition, being floated around in the same sentence with the Astrodome, how does it make you feel? I do want to go back to a setup question, too, is what are we calling this area right at this moment in time? Is it NRG Park? Is it Reliant? Is it Houston? What is it right now while we're in this flux?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really great question, Ashley. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. As of right now, it's NRG Park. For the World Cup, it will be Houston Stadium. We have to get rid of all the branding per FIFA guidelines. And then in August, it will be back to Reliant Park and Reliant Stadium. And so for right now, NRG Stadium until the World Cup comes, Houston Stadium, and then back to Reliant Stadium, which was the original name.
Take me in just a little deeper into that area, then we'll get back to what your real purpose here is. According to FIFA, they can't have their name on it, their branding. What's the understanding there? I didn't know that wrinkle in the rule.
Yeah, so FIFA wants to protect its own commercial sponsors. NRG is a sponsor of the local host committee, but they're not a sponsor with FIFA at large, and so they're not allowed to have their branding on the stadium. No stadium in the of any of the World Cup stadiums are allowed to have their branding there. So you think of Mercedes-Benz, you think of SoFi Stadium in LA. All of those stadiums also have to go through this debranding process as well.
Who pays for that?
It's paid for locally. FIFA does not pay for that, so it's paid for by the local host committee.
Roughly how much does it cost to remove all the signage of NRG, if you even know that number?
I don't. That's a number that I've tried to get, but unfortunately they won't release that to me. But it's definitely not, it's not nothing, that's for sure.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, anyway, back to the real reason you're here is the future of the Astrodome. I guess we have seen so many different plans over the years. It seems interesting to me that we've worked so hard to try and figure out what to do with it that destroying it is still an option. If it were an option, why didn't we just take it down at the start of all of this? For the amount of money that's poured into simply keeping the structure standing, seems like in for a penny, in for a pound at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of feelings about the Astrodome. There's a lot of nostalgia with Houston residents about the Astrodome. There's some political risk with destroying the Astrodome. Nobody wants to have the blood on their hands in a political sense. To be
and as well as we know, there is no blood in the Astrodome, right? Just to be clear on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it certainly makes sense from a financial standpoint. It's obviously a lot cheaper to destroy it than to redevelop it. But we've been kind of in this holding pattern since essentially 2002 when the last event was held there at the Astrodome.
Wow, just crazy to think that we would have a time where we would drive along 610 and not see the Astrodome there. It's such a part of who we are. 713-440-8870. Jimmy from the West Side is on the line. Jimmy, what's on your mind?
My suggestion is to sell the Astrodome to the highest bidder with certain restrictions. Billionaires could afford to buy it. And I think that's the best choice. Why tear it down when somebody, a billionaire, could buy it and maybe make it into a tourist attraction? They could have restaurants in there or whatever and make it still usable. So,
Jimmy, thank you for your thoughts on that. Chandler, I guess basically this is the question that's been at hand, is that who can sell it and who can buy it?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So Harris County owns the property. And they can theoretically sell it to private investors to come in and to redevelop it. And that is kind of the current proposal out there by the Astrodome Conservancy, which is the nonprofit organization that's kind of advocating for the Astrodome right now. They have an $840 million plan that would redevelop the Astrodome into this mixed-use entertainment district, and they would fund that using both private investors and public dollars. And so Harris County would need to be open to that in order for that to work. The county hasn't signaled that it is open to that. They're willing to talk to investors, it sounds like, but as far as going full in on a public-private partnership, they haven't signaled that just yet.
I guess one of the wrinkles in all of this is the fact that it sits in the middle of what we currently call NRG Park. It's not just a standalone building in a parking lot. It has all this other structure around it. And so the property itself is still county property. It's not like you can come in and just buy that parcel and do what you want with it. You can, as you're saying, it's kind of a deal into redevelopment of something, but it would retain within county ownership, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So the county would still retain ownership under that scenario. It's a paid off, it's debt free. And so the county has some incentives there. But in terms of a private investor coming in, they can utilize historic tax credits in order to offset some of their costs. And so I believe it's around $500 million is what the proposal is for the private investment side, and then around $200 million for the public investment side. Let me pull up the numbers here. $840 million is the total redevelopment cost that the Astrodome Conservancy put forth. $270 million of public investment and $570 million of private investment is kind of their proposal right now.
When you're talking that kind of money, what I wonder is, would investors rather invest in something brand new and build it up? Or is there a benefit of going into whatever may remain of the Astrodome and the different ideas I've seen floated around, from just the frame, the structure, some of the building, none of the building? Is that a sticking point for investors to decide what they're getting, and is it worth it? Or is it simply the idea, the name of the Astrodome, that eighth wonder of the world, carries enough weight to make you want to redevelop that particular structure?
That's a really interesting question. I think there's answers on both sides there. I think there definitely are some interested investors, particularly if you're interested in historic redevelopment, historic preservation. You know, there's people out there who are certainly interested in that, and they would be willing to come in and invest in the Astrodome. But in terms of if you're purely a private investor looking for a return on capital, maybe the Astrodome isn't the best place for you to park your capital and park your money. And so there's kind of arguments for both sides there.
We'll get into some of the other interesting wrinkles in what comes into play when you're trying to redevelop a space like that with other tenants around it. But we had a comment come in on YouTube that I thought was interesting. The property taxes on the place would sink any business. What kind of taxes would it be? Or would this be the county, the city would have to come together, the state even possibly, and say, you know, we're going to waive these taxes to make it attractive?
That could be an option. Yeah, there's certainly a number of different things that the city and the county and the state could do to make it an attractive development. But yeah, at the end of the day, private investment, it looks for a return on capital. You know, they're not just giving money out freely. You know, it isn't philanthropy, although philanthropic dollars could be at work here as well. But there certainly needs to be some incentives for these developers to come in and redevelop it.
We've talked about this number before, and I don't know if you have it at hand right now, but what it costs per month to simply keep the building just standing there?
Yeah, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I've heard in terms of a yearly number, it's around $4 million. That's what I've heard. And so it's,
and that's just to preserve what is currently just standing. And we are paying that every year. I'd heard $100,000 a month, but that was probably 20 years ago. I heard that number. So yours probably is the same as mine, just over time. We talk a little bit about leases and about the entire park itself. And there is talk of leases expiring for both the Houston Texans and the Livestock Show and Rodeo, which both use this facility, not the dome itself, but the facility all around it. My question is, even if these are coming up for expiration, where else are these folks going to go? I mean, there is the idea that the Texans may move out to the suburbs in some facility, but they've still got the stadium here. And that if the rodeo goes, where would the rodeo go without having to build a major complex to match what they have? So is the talk of licenses expiring really anything of value, or is it just a talking point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, for one, the Houston Texans just a couple of weeks ago, from the owner, Cal McNair, and President Mike Toman, they both committed to staying at NRG Stadium. They both want to be at NRG Stadium. They want to renovate the stadium. I believe the rodeo has the same opinion. So I don't believe that there's any truth to either of them wanting to move out. I think they both want to work it out at the venue because of all the benefits it provides. You know, you've got 350 acres, continuous space, right on 610 within the city. And so there's a huge value to being at NRG Park, soon to be Reliant Park. And I think both the Texans and the rodeo see that.
The only place where I would see the possibility of any information coming out of expiring leases is renegotiating those leases. Because as I understand, and this may be true, it may be not true, help me with it, that the rodeo has what's considered fence-to-fence control of the park. So when the rodeo is in session there, they would have to be able to also have control of anything happening in the dome. In that case, any business that would come in would have to be built on an 11-month business cycle as opposed to a 12-month full year. They would have to be willing to either strike a deal with the rodeo or hand over their property for 1 month out of the year to the rodeo. And I think business can't see how they can make that work, especially in this economic time. Does any of that ring true to you? Do you have you heard this version of the story, and is there truth behind it?
I have not, but I know as part of the negotiations at NRG Park, I mean, there is this issue of control. Who gets to control the park? Is it the county, which is who controls it right now, or is it the Texans and the rodeo? And so any type of lease negotiation is gonna touch on who gets control, who gets the revenues, who gets to schedule things there. Because right now the county has all the control, which also means the county has all the responsibility for maintenance and for renovations. Perhaps in the future, maybe that the county cedes that control to the Texans and to the rodeo. And, you know, you kind of have a switch up there. And so there's a little bit of truth there, I think.
713-440-8870. If you want to have some control in what you're going to say, you can call in and say it right now, like Gina from the Woodlands. Gina, what's on your mind?
The dome is a historical marker of the history of Houston, and we are considered now passing Chicago for the third largest city in the country, and we don't have really an amusement park theme for the kiddos, and you can make it a indoor outdoor amusement park with a giant roller coaster, because if they can do things inside out like the Mall of America and in casinos in Vegas, you can do something that has a cover for the kids can go to year round, and it'll bring lots of money because you're sort of covered with the roofing and all, and it will be bringing in money all the time for the rides in there.
Gina, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. I guess what she taps on is that this has become such a symbol of who we are, and it goes into the Houston identity of who Houston sees itself as, that people just don't want to let it go. If it disappears, who are we then? You know, if you think of even fridge magnets of Houston, there's the dome. It's who we are as a people. How do you then develop into that? How do you make something new or remove if you don't have the will of the people behind you?
Yeah, it's gonna be a contention issue no matter what. You know, there are strong opinions on both sides. I feel like certainly very strong opinions from a lot of native Houstonians and even non-Houstonians who see that historical value, like Gina just said. I will say one thing I want to make clear as well in terms of the demolition. The Astrodome has a designation known as a state antiquities landmark. And so in order for the Astrodome to be demolished, the county or whoever controls the Astrodome at that point would have to essentially apply to the Texas Historical Commission in order to demolish it. Now, the Texas Historical Commission has allowed for the demolition of these state antiquities landmarks in the past. It's very rare, though. And so, you know, we talk about demolition. I just want to make clear that there are some challenges there. Harris County can't just say, let's raise it and let's get rid of it. There has to be an application process, and there's a little bit of a kind of wrinkle there as well.
And even if they do that, how much does that cost?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a study late last year that came out. I believe the cost for just the demolition is about $54 million. But when you take in related site work and hauling off the debris and everything, Some estimates put it at around $100 million.
And that would be taxpayer money as opposed to redeveloping it would be a partnership, hopefully, that would come in less on our taxpayer pocket and more on developers.
That's right. Yeah. And that's kind of the whole argument of the Astrodome Conservancy is regardless, we're going to spend public money on this thing. And the Astrodome Conservancy would rather the county use that public money to fund a redevelopment or be part of funding a redevelopment of the Astrodome rather than just destroying it.
713-440-8870. Let's quickly grab Allison from the Heights. Allison, what are you thinking?
Hi. The person before us and you guys just touched on a couple of things. One was the cost of demolition, but also the cost of redevelopment is less if you actually keep what's there because you're not paying for structure a second time, although obviously you build some more, just like they're doing with office buildings downtown, repurposing things. I am a native Houstonian. I know that our legacy is somewhat of a tear down and start new, and I think it would be great to keep the historic aspect, but also it is something that could draw tourists if it became something different than just a place that was for an event and then empty all the rest of the time. I saw some of the proposals for redevelopment, and one had a big park in the middle of it. And, based on climate change and our incredibly moist environment, I think it'd be a great park.
Yeah.
I'd love to go with my child with some daylight and some air conditioning. So that's it.
Allison, thank you very much for sharing with us. Okay, Chandler, as I let you go, I'm curious if you were a betting man or reading tea leaves or whatever you want to do, 10 years from now, what do you think we're going to see in that exact spot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not a betting man, so I won't make any bets on the show here. But I can tell you for sure that something will happen. I believe that whether that's a redevelopment or a demolition, I believe one of those two options are going to happen. We're not going to sit in this continual holding pattern like we have for the past 20 plus years where it's just sitting there and nothing's been done. So I don't
really
know
feel
which
the motion
we're going to go.
You feel there's motion finally this time?
Absolutely, 100%.
Ooh, I'll be curious to see which way they go. Chandler, thank you very much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Chandler France covers money and the business of sports over at the Houston Business Journal. Coming up, something else you Texans are passionate about. We're talking tacos, the best taquerias in Texas, as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Gamola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Gamola to learn more about his ride.
Standards for bagels with them was the perfect match for local entrepreneurs.
I'm Kai Rizdal, the bagel economy. Next time on Marketplace.
You can listen to Marketplace coming up later today. It's on at 6:30.
HPM Plus brings you the latest news and information from around the world and across the street. Trusted journalists delivering facts, fairness, and perspective. Keeping you connected by keeping you informed. PBS NewsHour, Frontline, and documentaries that provide a voice to the voiceless. Stream live, engage on demand, and enjoy past seasons through PBS Passport. Search HPM Plus on your smart and connected TVs and stay informed.
Fuel the news you trust and become a new member today. I'm talking to you. You're here with us every day, and we need you to take the next step and make that gift to Houston Public Media. We need to get to 200 new members by Friday to unlock $10,000. This is an amazing time to become a new member. Do that now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Houston Parks Board, connecting Houstonians through 160 miles of Bayou Greenway hike and bike trails across our great city. Learn more at houstonparksboard.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
If you love tacos, and who doesn't, chances are you're always searching for the best taco spots, not just in your area, but also far and wide as well. Well, what if somebody did the hard part for you and made a list telling you which taquerias are worth checking out before you set out on a long and lengthy food journey? Some of these journeys won't take you so far from what I'm seeing. Well, somebody did just that, and that somebody is José R. Ralat, who is a 2-time James Beard Award-winning taco editor for Texas Monthly. He just released his midterm report on the 25 best new or improved taquerias in the entire state of Texas, 4 of which are right here in the Houston area. So to tell us more, we welcome José to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Hi.
Okay, people are going to want to call in on this one, so let me give them the number, 713-440-8870. Are you prepared? And I'm sure you've heard a lot of the arguments and the attack on you because you didn't pick their favorite taqueria.
Oh, sure. And that's fine. You know, I think that everyone should have a favorite taqueria.
Uh-huh.
You know, and everyone has the nostalgic favorite, right?
Yeah.
The one where they grew up going to. I'm not saying those are bad.
But I do want to know what you are saying is your criteria for how you picked who you picked.
Yes, so they had to open between August 2024 and March of this year, right before I filed this story. And they could be filed under improved if they moved into a brick and mortar, for example, right?
So like
a food
truck that became a brick and mortar, they would qualify.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess the next question, then we'll get into the list, and you can tell us who the 4 lucky ones are in our area. But I guess when you talk about a new taco establishment, a new taqueria, we're bringing in a whole different set of ideas in what a taco is. So it's not oftentimes mom and pop and grandparent and beyond generations ago, they've been making the same taco for 90 years. Are you looking for something that's fresh and new and moving the whole culture of taco forward? Or doesn't that matter? It's just got to be good when you put it in your mouth.
Well, ultimately, the food has to be good. Okay. But I want to see what's new. I want to see where the culture is moving. I want to see what can go into a tortilla, because the taco can be filled with anything almost.
Right. So then what is a taco? How would you define what a taco is?
Physically, it's a tortilla, a filling, and a salsa. Realistically, I call it a representation and a reflection of its time and place.
Uh-huh. So here's the hard part, at least for us, the 4 in our area. Who made your list?
Right. So it's Artura's Mexican Cafe, which is a mom and pop homie shop on Airline. Bar Solo, which is a modern cocktail. Huncho's, which is family owned, Tijuana style, but also halal. And then there's Maximo, which is in West University Place, and kind of runs it all with this modernist take. You know, there's masa cornbread with chicatana butter and caviar. They have a mushroom taco that uses bunapi, which are these little white mushrooms that pop like popcorn. You can just pop them in your mouth.
Yeah. When you say caviar, I get a feeling there's a lot of folks listening like, whoa, that's not a taco. So, but when you give your definition, it's basically a filled tortilla with whatever you want to fill it with and then some sort of a sauce to finish it off. So really, sky's the limit on what you can do with these. You mentioned the 4 that you mentioned in our area, but this is on your list of 25 for the state. How do our 4 rank out of those 25? Are we the tops?
I would say that Houston is the most dynamic.
Well, that makes us feel good. I like that. I like being the most dynamic when it comes to tacos. If you were to mix into this list the traditional old school taco shops, can they still hold a candle to flavor and advancements and culinary prowess? Do they still hold up?
Oh, absolutely. Now you have taquerias in Fort Worth that are doing traditional things like trompo and ribeye, carne asada. They're doing regional tacos as well. And I think what this list really shows us is that the taco is wide. It is various.
Yeah.
And all of these can be found in Mexico too. So it's not like they're aberrations.
Okay, let me ask about that though, because I'm Greek. So we have what's very popular in the Greek cuisine is the gyro. But the gyro was invented in America. And the only reason you have gyros in Greece now is because everyone went to Greece expecting it. The taco, though, where is the taco origin from?
That would be Mexico.
So it is truly Mexican.
Yes. But we have to remember that Texas was part of Mexico. And that we have a claim to it as well.
Yeah.
And we have our own traditions, like breakfast tacos, for example. And they are just as valid there, and they're tasty.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they are tasty. Quickly, before we run out of time, though, you visited nearly, if my numbers are right, 200 taquerias, around that many taquerias. What made the memorable ones stand out above simply the really good ones?
The experience. So, for example, there was a truck that made carnitas, and they made it traditionally in these big pots right on the truck, but they were on a truck.
Yeah.
That was novel. That was fun. Generally homey feeling really speaks to me, but creativity is something that I always look out for.
Well, Jose, what I have to tell you is you're just about done with us now, so you could go get a taco for lunch. We have another hour of the show, so I can't eat for another hour, and you've made me very hungry. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
José R. Ralat is a James Beard award-winning taco editor for Texas Monthly, and he continues to search for that ultimate taco. Coming up, we're going to continue to search for answers in what happened in last night's runoff election right here on Hello Houston. Don't go anywhere.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
support comes from Pearland, a community dedicated to growing innovative businesses and inspiring families, offering a diverse workforce, modern infrastructure, and schools, parks, and more. Details at pearlandedc.com. Pearland, innovation lives here.
Well, the rain's moving in, and the southwest area should see some showers over most of Houston in the next few minutes. Currently 75, and this is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll continue breaking down the results of last night's Texas primary runoff election with Houston Public Media's politics and government reporter, Andrew Schneider. I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, the Texas Tribune's economy and industry reporter, Paul Cobler, fills us in on big companies moving their legal home to Texas despite generating few jobs for the state. And Stages Houston's artistic director, Derek Livingston, joins us to share their upcoming 2026-27 season and their production of Spamilton, an American parody. Also, we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live over on YouTube. Just simply go to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is huddling with his top aides as his administration weighs its options for ending the war the U.S. and Israel began with Iran in late February. At today's cabinet meeting, Trump is expressing confidence both sides will reach a deal.
Iran is very much intent. They want very much to make a deal. So far, they haven't gotten there. We're not satisfied with it, but we will be. We will be either that or we'll have to just finish the job.
It is a marked contrast from over the weekend when Trump projected a breakthrough was imminent. U.S. forces later launched attacks on Iranian missile launch sites and suspected mine-laying boats that the Pentagon described as defensive strikes. Iran accused the United States of acting in bad faith. In the fallout of the war with Iran, the impact on shrimpers, Americans eat more than 5 pounds of shrimp per person every year on average. But as Drew Hawkins from the Gulf States newsroom tells us, Southern shrimpers are getting squeezed by imported seafood and skyrocketing fuel costs.
A.C. Cooper has shrimped the Gulf for more than 50 years. Now his boat sits tied to the dock in Port Sulphur, Louisiana. He's taken a second job ferrying oil rig workers to make ends meet.
You know, you can't make enough money during this shrimp season in order to make it all year. So we have to supplement our way of life.
Diesel has spiked to over $5 a gallon. Cooper says he has to catch at least 1,000 pounds of shrimp just to break even on fuel costs. He says he hopes he can get back to shrimping, to doing what he loves. Until then, his boat remains tied to the docks. For NPR News, I'm Drew Hawkins in Port Sulphur, Louisiana.
The Minneapolis police chief tasked with reforming the department after the 2020 high-profile murder of George Floyd has resigned. Kari Spencer reports the official stepped down after facing discipline from the mayor.
An investigation found that Brian O'Hara likely interfered with a prior investigation into allegations that he had sexual relationships with city employees. Investigators said that those allegations were not substantiated, but Mayor Jacob Frey said the investigation interference was a breach of trust.
When you serve as chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, trust is not secondary to the job, it is the job. And when trust is broken, it becomes extremely difficult to continue leading effectively.
O'Hara came to Minneapolis in 2022, bringing with him the promise of rebuilding MPD and trust with the city's residents. For NPR News, I'm Kari Spencer in Minneapolis.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton advances to the general election for U.S. Senate after defeating four-term Senator John Cornyn in yesterday's runoff. It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton defeated incumbent Senator John Cornyn in the primary runoff election last night. Speaking on NPR's Morning Edition, political scientist Brandon Rottinghouse says Cornyn's defeat represents the end of Bush-era conservatism.
that business-oriented, institutional conservative that has a pragmatic streak, was effectively defeated last night by Ken Paxton, but also as a proxy by Donald Trump.
With nearly all ballots counted, Paxton took home nearly 64% of the vote. Fort Bend County officials are investigating why widespread problems at polling locations on Tuesday led to a 2-hour window where residents were unable to cast a ballot in the primary runoff election. Interim County Judge Daniel Wong's communications director Bobby Everly said the issue was due to a technical glitch.
Due to a routine data update that they just uploaded the wrong file accidentally, one of the elections administrator's personnel. So as soon as they did that, they were isolating the problem and working with the vendor to find a solution.
The glitch did not affect voting booths, but mainly the software that's used to check in voters and verify their registration. Taking a look at sports, the Astros drop another one to the Rangers 10-7 last night. Houston and Texas meet up again tonight at 7:10 in Arlington. The Astros continue to linger near the bottom of the AL West at 24 wins, 32 losses. Taking a check of your weather, we've got a 60% chance of showers and thunderstorms today with a high near 80. Tonight's going to be mostly cloudy. We'll see a low around 75 with some showers and thunderstorms possible. And then on Thursday, a 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 86. Right now, overcast 75 degrees on the UH campus. For more information, go to our webpage, houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Building a career is possible at Progressive Insurance, now offering virtual and hybrid employment opportunities with pathways for advancement. Learn more at careers.progressive.com.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous.
Hello again. We are still letting the dust settle from last night's elections. We'll be talking about who were the victors, who were the non-victors, I'll be kind, and what the future holds for us and for them. But also on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the story about corporations saying that Texas is their home. But what does that mean for us who are trying to find jobs? Is there really an impact for Texans when corporations quote-unquote move to Texas? In addition to that, Stages Theater, Stages Houston is one of our premier arts organizations in town. They have announced their 26-27 season. Their artistic director is going to be here in a bit to go through it with us and tell us what we can look forward to seeing on stage. But as we keep mentioning, Election Day was yesterday for the runoffs, and Andrew Schneider, our politics and government reporter for Houston Public Media, who's basically been up now about 48 hours straight doing all this coverage.
It's something close to that, yes.
What I love is on all of our local shows, there's Andrew. On the national shows, there's Andrew. Andrew is everywhere, and we did a special last night. And who sat next to me all night? There was Andrew again. So you've gotten a front row seat on all of this and shared it with our whole community. And so we want to talk more about what the results say, what it means, what comes next. But if you want to join the conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870. This time I want to talk a little bit more about what happened. Well, first of all, we had a question about voter turnout.
Right.
And I'm curious about what you found in that, because there was a big race out there, that Senate race.
Yes. So I dug into the Texas Secretary of State's website. That's the one that has all the 254 counties reporting from across the state. And what I found was that in the biggest race on the Republican side, the race for U.S. Senator, there was a turnout of just a shade under 1.4 million votes cast for both candidates combined.
Wow.
There wasn't anything like that on the Democratic side because they had already selected their nominee back in March. The leading races there on the Democratic side were for lieutenant governor and attorney general, and in both of those cases, the vote totals came to about 550,000 combined. So much stronger Republican turnout. That was to be predicted based on the fact that the Democrats, as I said, had already selected their Senate candidate.
They had settled a lot of folks already. Probably the biggest race for the Democrats we're looking at was Texas 18 in our area.
Yes, and the turnout there was considerably smaller because it was a much smaller voting base.
Right. But we did see just a 2 weeks ago, we had special election for District C, or it's District C, Seat C in City Hall.
Yes.
For City Council, and that was a tiny turnout of voters. And so when you get into just regions or areas, that's going to greatly reduce you. But the impact of a U.S. representative going to Washington for us is very influential. So really would have hoped for a higher engagement.
Yes, well, particularly given how long this seat was vacant. But it goes back to what we were talking about in the last hour, which is that voter fatigue is a real phenomenon. I mean, in the case of the 18th congressional district, some people were going to the polls for the fourth time since October or November for just to fill this seat. You had the special election with early voting in October, the election day in November. That boiled down to two candidates. So you had the runoff at the end of January, and then almost immediately thereafter, you had early voting for the primary in February, election day in March, and then this fourth time. So a lot of people must have felt that they didn't know why they were being asked to go back yet again. But it was necessary to settle the field.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will calm down in the upcoming year, but we do know November will be our next big one. Ken Paxton was not going to be our attorney general again, no matter what, or at least not in this upcoming race, and he has stepped in now to be the Senate candidate. But that leaves us wondering what's happening in the AG race. What did we see last night?
We saw Mays Middleton go out to a commanding lead over Congressman Chip Roy. The numbers were a little over 55% for Senator Middleton, a little under 45% for Congressman Roy. Middleton had, even though he didn't have the endorsement of President Trump, he very strongly aligned himself with the MAGA movement. He branded himself as MAGA Mays Middleton in all of his commercials and in all of his speeches. And he also had a sizable advantage in fundraising. He was self-funded. Middleton, in his day job, because, of course, being a state legislature is only a part-time gig, if a significant one, is that he has a family oil and gas exploration business, and he plowed tens of millions of dollars of his own money into this campaign. So those two factors together, played both played an overwhelming role in pushing him to victory.
On the Democratic side, though, we also saw a choice for nominee.
Right, and that was State Senator Nathan Johnson won the Democratic nomination. He polled a little over 60% of the vote. That was against former Galveston Mayor Joe Jaworski, making his second bid for the Democratic nomination for Texas Attorney General. Came in a little under 40% of the vote. Not entirely clear what dynamics were in play here. Both of them were arguably less known than Middleton or Roy. But Johnson was able to make a very strong case that he was that he had the more experience, I think, at the state level, and would be a more formidable opponent to the Republican nominee.
For those of us at a certain age, Jaworski is a name that's known politically from his grandfather's work and all of that. Has that passed? Is the Jaworski name not enough to move voters, do you think?
I would argue that it hasn't been enough to move voters for quite some time. I mean, Joe Jaworski served one term as mayor of Galveston. One can debate the merits of his records one way or another, but he has not held office in over 10 years.
Right. Which surprisingly you said about Anise Parker. That just caught me off guard that it had been that long since she was in office.
Yes. Well, Anise Parker had a rather longer record in office than Joe Jaworski did. I mean, she served 3 terms as Houston mayor. Before that, she was Houston city controller, and before that, she was on Houston city council.
Right. We are inviting your calls, your thoughts, your reactions to what happened last night. Did you vote? Who did you vote for? Were you surprised by the results? Anything you want to share with us when it comes to the election. 713-440-8870. Rebecca is on the line from the Medical Center. So, Rebecca, what are your thoughts today?
Well, I have a question about the Congressional District 18 race.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had 2 really very popular candidates, 2 very good representatives. And, you know, but Al Green has always represented a very safe Democratic district. And because of that, you don't have to work as hard to turn out your voters, right? And Christian's been, you know, running a bunch of races. He's had to run a bunch of tough races. And he's really got his field game in order. And he had a very strong campaign director with very experienced with field. How much do you think all that knocking doors, making calls, and the volunteers being out there made a difference in this race?
Great question, Rebecca. So the ground game, how
I
impactful is that?
think it was critical. I think Menifee, over the course of the past nearly a year, or roughly a year that he had been running for this campaign, basically put him in touch with a lot of voters in the district that became the new 18th in a way that Green simply didn't. I mean, as you said, I mean, he's represented what the now old 9th for more than 20 years. And he hasn't had to campaign in the same way that Menifee had to get his name out.
Menifee also seemed to have, and thank you, Rebecca, for calling and sharing with us. Menifee, and it's always hard to say this in today's landscape because you never know how people see the media they see. You know, we get so much, our algorithms are calculated and they show us what we want to see, so I don't know what the general public sees outside of what I see. But the Menifee ads I saw all looked different than political ads we've seen for years. They felt younger, fresher. They were more dynamic visually. They were dad with his kids and kind of outlines and color and all the... And I thought he spoke to a new generation in his ads. Now, I also saw some more traditional ads of his at other points, but it seemed like the candidates who were embracing this were a new voice, were a new time, were new people, were looking for new answers.
Yeah, there were 2 ads that stood out for me in the Menifee campaign. The one, and this really dates back to the before the March primary, was the one of him at the gym. And you know, talking about he was a fighter and he was taking on Governor Abbott and he was taking on President Trump and he was fighting and he was winning. Yeah. You know, the whole question of who's a fighter, that's a common theme through candidates and both parties up and down the ballot. The one that struck me in the runoff more was the sheer number. There was one that had several, one would say, you know, middle-aged or older voters who had traditionally voted for Green or identified themselves as having traditionally voted for Green, and they were the ones who were saying, it's time for a change. It's time for a younger voice. It's time for somebody new. And that was, you know, the argument there was that he had the capacity to cut into Green's base in a way that Green could not cut into Menifee's base.
That's a good point. Do we know yet, or will we know, age range of people who voted? Do we have any demographic?
I have not seen any kind of breakdown like that of that, and I think that's probably something that we'd have to see some kind of exit polling on.
Because traditionally, we often say it's the older voter who votes. You know, that younger voters aren't being motivated to go to the polls. But there has been a push to motivate the younger voter, or by younger, if we're saying 50 and under. So it'd be interesting to see, are they having movement there? And is that's what helping these less recognized candidates? And I mean just less recognized. I mean, we saw falling out of their offices, Al Green, Parker, Cornyn, Joe Jaworski, all names that have been around for a while, didn't carry themselves on just name value.
Right. I mean, worth mentioning that with the exception of Cornyn, these are people that are people who'd previously held office that are rather than people who are seeking to be returned to the office they already held.
I tell you, I want to pitch this reality show. We've got Al Green, Anise Parker, John Cornyn, and Joe Jaworski in a car driving across Texas. I would tune in and watch that and see see the state they're a part of. Your biggest surprise last night?
By far, it had to be the turnout in the Harris County judges race.
Really?
You know, I think a lot of people, myself included, were expecting that because of Parker's superior name recognition, because of the work that she had done previously throughout Houston, that her not to mention her fundraising experience, because she spent a good chunk of the last decade since leaving office as mayor in charge of the LGBTQ plus Victory Fund and Leadership Institute, that she would have turned in a stronger performance. You know, most of the polling that I saw suggested that not only would she win, but she would win by a sizable margin.
Right.
Instead, Letitia Plummer came out strong. You know, came out ahead of her, not by much, but by a significant enough margin in the early voting, and that lead just expanded throughout the night as the numbers continued to come in.
We mentioned this already, but it's worth re-mentioning that it's voter turnout and what turns them out. And that makes all the difference in the world. If everyone voted 100% of voting all the time, we'd have different outcomes. But what ends up happening is there are certain races that motivate certain voters to go to the polls, and while they're there, they vote for other things too. So in the 18th, you're coming out to maybe vote Menifee over Al Green. While you're there, who are you going to pick between your candidates for Harris County judge? You may be more familiar with Letitia Plummer because you may be a younger voter and she's been more active more recently in elected office. You then go to Republicans and you talk about the large turnout of Republicans. Well, they had that big Senate race on the ballot, so they're coming out to vote for that. And while they're there, they may vote some Republicans down the line.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that struck me, and I was watching going back to watch Cornyn's concession speech afterwards. We heard a little bit of it on last night's special, but I had to review the entirety of it. It was about 9 minutes for the program that I did earlier this morning on NPR, and he was talking about the fact that 8% of the qualified Republican voters, or 8% of the voters turned out and voted in the Republican primary, and 60% of those voted for his opponent. So it doesn't take much. What it does take is for people to show up. And the point that he made, and he said this, I make this repeatedly throughout my career. It's a truism, but the person that gets the most votes wins.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it should go without saying, but I mean, with everything hinging on, what different polls say about predicting who's going to win, it leaves out that basic fact that everything really comes down to turnout on, in the early voting and on election day.
I mentioned last night, Judge Ed Emmett joined us for a moment on the show last night, and I mentioned the idea that, just because you have the polling says you're going to win, I believe that actually it can hurt you, because voters feel like if the polls are far ahead, like in Anise Parker saying she's got this in the bag, you're not as motivated to have to go to the poll and vote because you think your candidate's already going to win. He kind of pushed back on that, didn't buy that much. I don't know. I'm still kind of in there. But I wonder now we hear all this polling saying James Tallarico is up. Can that bite him? Because people may think he's got it. He needs every vote if he's going to actually challenge a Republican in this state.
Yeah, I mean the thing with polling, and this is an issue that goes back far into American political history, at least as far back as polling has been an issue, is that you have to do a very careful job as to who you're asking these questions of, and I think that was the point that Emmett was making last night, that they may have been asking the right questions to the wrong people or to the wrong questions to the wrong people. I don't think Tallarico is going to make the mistake of resting on his laurels this far in advance of the election.
But it's the voters that I worry about. If you think we have a chance, this may be different because it's such a watershed moment if he can do this.
I'm already seeing his making pitches to voters saying, we've got a tough race ahead of us. We need your support now. We need we need you to come forward with your whatever volunteer support you can provide or any money that you can donate. I think that he's going to be making a strong push for that for several months to come. Whether you like him or you don't like him, he has a significant enough sense of what's required in order to succeed or try and succeed at the state level that he's not likely to sit back and say, well, the polls say that I'm close, so I don't need to fight.
713-440-8870. Jovi from Southwest Houston is on the line. What's on your mind, Jovi?
Hi, I just wanted to add a comment about the Harris County judge election. For me, as an HISD parent, I think, Parker's involvement and some old tweets asking for a state takeover really kind of made a huge difference in my perspective and in encouraging others, parents and others involved in HISD to get out and vote. So that was a huge difference for me, and I'm glad to see that did make a difference.
Jovi, thank you for that. Yeah, today is a different world than 50 years ago. Anything you say, everything you say is chronicled and out there. Old tweets, old messages. Things sometimes are taken out of context. Other times they are exactly in context, but they live on. So you have to be careful.
Yes, I have to confess, Jovi, this was an aspect of the Harris County judge's race that went completely under my radar. I did not see anything in the course of the campaign that mentioned this. I suspect that it may well have played a role with HISD parents that will remember her.
I hadn't seen it until just the last couple days, and then I saw it surface, and so I thought it was so little, so late that it wouldn't have an impact, and I don't know if that was impactful or not, considering everything else we're looking at. But in a race that ended up being so close, any little thing matters.
Exactly.
713-440-8870. Mark from East Side. Mark, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing well. What
Thanks.
are you thinking?
Good. Two questions. First, for truth comparison purposes, you gave us a number of Republican voters who voted in the primary between Cornyn and Paxton.
Yeah.
What was the actual percentage of Republican voters who voted in the election compared to the number of registered Republicans? And second, what was the number of voters who voted in the Democratic primary between Tallarico and Crockett?
I would have to look that up. I can tell you that the last time we had a midterm election, back in 2022, the Republicans had something like over 4 million voters that came out and voted for Greg Abbott. So it's down significantly from 4 years ago, but that was the general election. So it's kind of comparing apples and oranges. as far as I'm sorry.
Turnout I know has been low across the board. So if it's 1.1 million and we have how many million? 30 million residents of Texas,
something like that. Although I don't know how many of them are of voting age.
Right, but if you split them in half, you're down to 15 million. You then take out those that are too young to vote, and you can get closer to where it is. But any way you look at it, it was not a huge percentage of registered voters on either side of the party, or at least affiliated voters, I should say, on either party that came out to vote yesterday. But you're expecting to see it much bigger this fall.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Quickly, today is the Would You Rather Wednesday. Our Would You Rather question was, would you rather spend a day with your favorite celebrity or your future self? You are self-loving people. 62% of those that responded to our poll would rather spend a day with their future self. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, we're going to find out what it means when corporations move their headquarters, quote unquote, to Texas. Right now, this is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Fuel the news you trust and become a new member today. I'm talking to you. You're here with us every day, and we need you to take the next step and make that gift to Houston Public Media. We need to get to 200 new members by Friday to unlock $10,000. This is an amazing time to become a new member. Do that now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support comes from the Grand 1894 Opera House presenting Beware of Short Texans, starring Jaston Williams of Greater Tuna. The performance includes stories and characters drawn from Texas life and theater. July 11th, tickets at thegrand.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap, meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
More major companies are choosing Texas as their legal home, with firms like Dell and Exxon joining a growing trend of corporations moving their incorporation status from states like Delaware to Texas. The companies are making the move, then they say that it will strengthen Texas' reputation as a business powerhouse. But questions are being raised about how many of these moves really do benefit the state's economy and if these moves are really creating new jobs. Joining us to discuss this is a frequent guest on the show. Paul Cobler is the economy and industry reporter for the Texas Tribune. Paul, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Ernie, good to see you again.
Good to see you. I guess where I would start with all of this, since I mentioned Delaware in the opening, that we're talking about places moving out of locations such as Delaware and New Jersey. So for me to understand any of this argument, what does Delaware or New Jersey offer that first makes them, what's the word I'm looking for?
Desirable.
Desirable. Thank you. I couldn't get that word. It's been a long 24 hours with the elections here. What makes them desirable to corporations?
Well, and I hope you were able to get some sleep, Ernie, but I think the thing to think about Delaware in particular, it is the most desirable. It's the host to about 66% of all Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in the state of Delaware. Now, that does not mean if you drive through Delaware, you have corporate headquarters for some of the largest companies of the world just lining the many highways that go through that state. We're talking about their legal home. And so what that affects is taxing. And if they get sued, they're subject to the state laws and corporate governance codes that state has. And so Delaware in particular, they have they're called Court of Chancery, that are these specialized business courts that are basically, they don't have juries, so they don't kind of have the chaos of a jury trial and what the public might think of a particular case. They have judges that are educated, that are very knowledgeable in business law, that hear the cases. And then they also have corporate governance codes that are just kind of generally more friendly to shareholders and to management, that companies see as desirable. And it's the same thing in New Jersey, but obviously not anywhere near that 66% mark that Delaware has for Fortune 500 companies.
When I think about this topic and when I first was reading about it, what came to mind for me immediately was the cruise ship industry, where these boats are licensed in other places, so they're under the jurisdictions of those governments, but they operate right here in the U.S. And so it kind of feels a little bit of a shell game, a bait and switch. So when you talk then about corporations moving, you're talking about them doing their legal paperwork, their incorporating status in our state. But really, they don't have to be more present than they may already be, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, and I think that was sort of why I did this story in the first place, was seeing these headlines about Exxon, which actually there's, I don't know if you timed this intentionally, there's some breaking news today that the shareholders voted to approve the board recommendation that they reincorporate in the state of Texas. So that is official as of this morning that is happening. But Dell too recently had done this, and I saw a lot of fanfare about this, but in my head I was like, Dell's located right up the road from me in Austin, and Exxon is in Spring, right. Down in your neck of the woods. Like, what does this actually mean? And so that was kind of where I started digging into this a little more and realized that it is sort of like you said. I mean, I think you can call it a shell game, but this is just the way that corporate governance is set up nationally. This has sort of been the way of the world for decades and decades and decades. And these companies are seeking the best deal that they can get in terms of taxation, in terms of legal judgment. And, it's kind of hard to blame a company for taking advantage of the system as it's set up.
If you have questions, you want to join this conversation with Paul, give us a call at 713-440-8870. I guess what also disturbs me in this is the idea that the state of Texas would create more favorable laws and policies for corporations, selling it to the people, the public, the voter, as we will lighten up these restrictions because we're going to bring these industries here. So maybe we step back on taxes and different things and legalities, because the benefit is there's going to be a lot more job opportunity and growth. But actually, the reality becomes we're going to lighten up these laws, loosen things up, make it easier for corporations to do whatever, and I don't mean to editorialize, but the big bad things corporations may be thought of doing for no benefit really for us.
Well, I'll allow you to editorialize, because that is certainly the criticism that I heard from people that I talked to. And I think that's a really interesting thing that's happening right now is, like we talked about Delaware being this sort of long-term home of so many of these corporations. There's this trend going on. We have a funny word for every trend that's happening called Dexit, which is basically Delaware exit, a la Brexit or Texit or any of the other exits you can think of. But this kind of goes back to some rulings recently that the Delaware Court of Chancery has made that companies have perceived to be kind of unfriendly to management. And really the big one, the other big companies that have moved have been a lot of Elon Musk's companies, because he had a pay package for about $56 billion that was approved by shareholders. But then he faced a shareholder lawsuit to block that $56 billion pay package. And the Court of Chancery allowed for that to happen. So he was like, all right, fine, you're going to block my big pay raise, then I'm just going to move all of my companies, SpaceX, Tesla, and move them down to the state of Texas where there is this friendlier environment. And that's kind of that's sort of the way to think about it, is we are not the only state that is seeing this trend and is trying to capitalize on it. Nevada has sort of been at this for a while, but Georgia is doing this a lot more. Not every state really has the time or the resources to do so, but we're that's really what I heard from experts is they don't know where this is going to go, but there is this sort of growing trend where where states are now trying to compete for these reincorporations and sort of trying to compete with each other by having a, friendlier business court, by having a friendly government regulation, by having a friendlier sort of tax system set up for these companies. And like, where does that lead? I don't think people necessarily know, but I can certainly see the argument where it gets more and more beneficial for these companies. They get more savings. They're, able to get friendlier rulings and so on.
Are there any requirements or regulations, restrictions to incorporate in the state of Texas? What's the payoff?
The payoff for the companies or for the state?
I guess both.
Yeah.
I guess for the companies, it's the lighter legal ramifications, the jury trials, things you've talked about. But for the state, what is the benefit to get them to incorporate here? And are there regulations on which companies or what you need to do to be able to incorporate here?
Yeah, understood. Yeah, it's honestly, it's pretty easy. There are filing fees that are associated with this. I mean, if you're that's kind of like the same way going back to Delaware is that Delaware is able to, draw all of these Fortune 500 companies from across the globe to be incorporated there. And it's the same case for Texas is there's really not a very high bar that's in place for, Dell was initially incorporated in the state of Texas when it launched on the University of Texas campus 40 years ago. And it was just this tiny little thing on a university campus. But as they get bigger and companies mature, they tend to move to these friendlier environments in Delaware. And so now we're seeing this trend going back. But there's really nothing to say this company is worthy or not worthy of the state of Texas. Now, from our perspective, we collect franchise taxes when we're talking about Dell and Exxon. We collect franchise taxes also if companies have a physical presence here. And like we talked about, they have their very large headquarters located here. So we're already collecting those. We're not getting any additional revenue in that sense. There are filing fees that are associated with, just basically having to fill out the day-to-day paperwork of operating a company that we collect. But I mean, I'm talking like hundreds of dollars rather than thousands or millions of dollars in terms of how much these fees are. So they're not
based on the valuations of the companies, these filing fees?
No, but bigger companies do more is basically the way to think about it. So this does add up to millions of dollars, but when we're talking about a state budget of, $70+ billion, it's not. It's really a drop in the bucket. The other benefit, and I think this is what is interesting is when we think of Delaware, this is what they do. This is all that they do. And it basically makes up these filing fees and franchise taxes they collect make up about 20 to 25% of their state budget every year. And it has also created industries centered around this. And this is a very kind of white collar space where there's a lot of financial folks doing banking. And then there's a very large legal industry because of these court of chanceries and the number of cases that go through there. And so it does have a meaningful impact on the Delaware state economy in terms of the number of these white collar jobs that it does create and in terms of the tax and fees that they collect impacting the state budget and allows them to keep taxes lower in other places. But we are such a big state with so many, with such a diverse economy that we will see these benefits. We will see, we're seeing the sort of Texas Stock Exchange popping up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's part of this is sort of all these financial folks that are coming in to be able to work with these companies that are relocating to the state of Texas and want to be closer to the bankers. And then also on the legal side with the business courts that launched in 2023, getting underway and seeing more and more volume of cases. There's going to be more lawyers, but it's not going to be anything like Delaware where it's, a quarter of the budget by any means.
Okay, so we see the benefits to the companies coming here, and you just outlined some benefits to us as a state for receiving them. So I guess the bigger bone to pick with all of this is the fact it's the promises made or the understanding made that aren't being proven out. The idea that they're moving their corporation, lots more jobs for people. But if you remove that element of the story, if you remove the part about maybe misleading promises about it, does it hurt us to have these companies just incorporate in our state?
Yeah. Well, and I think the argument for sort of the fanfare behind getting these wins is it's good PR. You know, we are thought of as this very business friendly state. And when we are convincing companies to reincorporate down here, that just sort of adds to that. Same with growing our legal industry centered around our business courts. Same with, growing the financial industry and the creation of the Texas Stock Exchange. It just sort of continues to add to this idea that we are a place people want to do business. And the argument made by the supporters of this is that is going to then, lead to companies feeling like they can make more physical investments here, like building more warehouses, drilling more oil wells, sort of anything and everything that you could think of that all of these various companies could do. And that will also create, blue collar jobs and jobs at different levels of the income bracket that, are going to be desirable for Texans of all stripes. But those are sort of knock-on effects rather than the specific effect that is created from this. Now, on the negative side, an example that's playing out recently in court that's been pointed to me was the real estate company EXP had a scandal where some of its most successful real estate agents were accused of sexual assault and sued. This is again where this gets a little complicated. Sued in quite a few different states, just as like for them violating the law, for them abusing these women allegedly, but they were also faced with a shareholder lawsuit in Delaware, where basically the shareholders saying, hey, when you have these employees that are, conducting this misconduct, that's bad for business for us. And they were arguing that the board members and that the CEO were aware of this and were covering it up. And again, that's bad for business, that they are failing in their fiduciary responsibility to the company. So that's when this case starts playing out in Delaware. And right around when this lawsuit was filed, the EXP announced that they would reincorporate in the state of Texas, where there are stricter requirements basically for if shareholders are able to sue. We have this provision that was created in the last legislative session that creates a 3% threshold for shareholders to band together to be able to sue, rather than just like a handful that might, own a very small percentage of the company. But like when you think of like Tesla, and like 3% of Tesla's stock price is just like $30 billion or something like that, which is not really a feasible group of people to get together to be able to sue. And so that's kind of part of this argument, is that companies can look at Texas as a place to be able to shield themselves from some of these lawsuits, and that it's far more friendly to the management of the company than to the shareholders themselves, who might have an issue with the way the company is being managed.
Paul, thank you for shedding light on this story and helping us to hear all the different sides of it so we can see how do we feel about this. And remember, we just had an election. That's where you can have your voices heard on whether you like this policy for the state. And moving forward, remember to vote. And then you get the people in office that you want to do the things you need to do. Anyway, Paul, thank you very much for joining us today. Keep up the good work over there at the Texas Tribune.
Thank you, Ernie. It's a complicated one. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thanks. Paul Cobler is the economy and industry reporter for the Texas Tribune. Okay, coming up, it's time to preview what Stages has coming to their stages in the next season, right here on Hello Houston.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
On the next Fresh Air, Ben Rhodes. He was a speechwriter and deputy national security advisor for President Obama. Rhodes has written a new book collecting and commenting on some of the most inspiring and the most divisive political speeches in American history. It's called All We Say, The Battle for American Identity in 15 Speeches. Join us.
You can listen to Fresh Air. It's on tonight at 8 o'clock.
Trustworthy news is why you tune in every day. Become a new member by Friday, and you'll help us unlock $10,000. That goes right back into this station that you rely on. You can do that at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
HPM Plus brings you the latest news and information from around the world and across the street. Trusted journalists keeping you connected by keeping you informed. Search HPM Plus on your smart and connected TVs and stay informed.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous.
Over the past few months, we've invited representatives from Houston's many acclaimed arts organizations onto the show to tell us about their upcoming 2026-27 seasons and to give Houstonians a preview of all the fantastic shows, performances, and artists heading to the Bayou City or being created right here in the Bayou City. Today, we're putting the spotlight on one of my favorite organizations, Stages Houston, and their upcoming 2026-27 season, which includes a lineup of award-winning musicals, dramas, comedies, and more. Here to break it all down for us is Stages Houston's artistic director, Derek Charles Livingston. Derek, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
The reason I say one of my favorites, for full disclosure, I served on the board of Stages for a number of years ago. Longer than when Anise Parker was last in office. It was a long time ago. But I always feel a kinship to the organization, and so I want to let people know that I'm coming into this already loving Stages.
Well, great.
First of all, just for folks to know a little bit about you, you are at the helm of Stages. You've been there for a few years now.
I am at the helm of Stages. Prior to being here, most recently, I was the interim artistic director and director of new play development at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, a Tony Award-winning theater. Mm-hmm. And many years ago, ran Celebration Theater in Los Angeles, which is the country's second oldest continuously operating LGBT theater in the country. And
applause for you.
Thank you. Spent a number of years as an actor and a director, and have a theater degree from Brown and a film degree from UCLA. And early in my career, worked at Playwrights Horizons when it was on this string of winning Pulitzer Prizes, and really got great tutelage there under a number of really wonderful people.
Okay, taking all of that wisdom and experience, you sit down, probably a while back, and said, okay, what's the 26-27 season going to look like for Stages Houston? What's the first thing that came to mind?
I was fortunate to learn that Come From Away, the big Broadway musical that was very successful and had a long run on Broadway and a number of touring productions, became available for professional theaters and non-professional theaters also to have their productions. And so as soon as I was able to get that, I grabbed it. So that's going to open our season. And many people probably have seen Come From Away, but they have only seen it on tour in big houses, and they've seen it on Broadway in a big house. Stage's largest theater is 241 seats. So you're going to get that story up close and personal in an intimate way, which is one of the things that Stages really leans very heavily into. But with the top-notch professional actors, and so it's the first Houston production of that show in an intimate theater, but still the big, grand, beautiful story that you know and love. And if people don't know, on September 11th, when the planes all had to come out of the air, a number of planes were diverted to a small town called Gander in Newfoundland. And prior to jet fuel or big jet engines, planes used to stop there when they made transatlantic crossings. So they had this large airport in a small town. So any number of people landed there, and come from away is how Newfoundlanders say you come from some other place. Oh, you come from away. And the entire town responded to these tens of thousands of people who were stranded for several days. And it is a beautiful story of how a community supports people in a time of crisis.
Okay, so you're building a season.
Yes.
You hear this show becomes available. You put that in. It's opening your season September. Well, I was confused when your season actually opens.
Yes,
You got so
September.
much going on during the summer. But September 18th, it's going to open at your theater. Now, do you use that as the linchpin for developing the rest of what you put out there? Is it that it was just a pleasant surprise to be able to get it, and therefore you already had other things that were stewing?
It is part of the conversation. So, Stage's mission is we tell stories that uplift humanity. And this show uplifts humanity. And one of the things on our wall is we sit together in the dark to learn how to love each other in the light.
Which is a brilliant quote.
And it is so true. And that's how I feel about theater. And so this show fit into that, as do all of our shows, really, some way, shape, or form. How do we sit together to learn something different about people, to learn something about the human condition, to become closer and more intimately connected with another human being. And so that really is the touchstone, the guiding point of the season. And every season, and Come From Away fit into it so beautifully, and it was such a wonderful way to open the season. And again, the first Houston production of this very well known and very beloved Broadway musical. And I love musicals personally, so it was really a wonderful way to begin the season.
Then you go to The Roommate. I saw that on Broadway. I saw it with Mia Farrow and Patti LuPone in it. I'm curious. I think I've asked you this before. When you pick a show like that, do you already have to have in mind, I know actors that can carry this? Because it's a two-person show, and it's a good show.
Sure. And, fortunately, Houston is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent.
We're ripe with talent.
Absolutely. And so I didn't have to think very long about any number of actors who could play, these women in midlife, who have to have a lot of depth, a lot of comedic chops, as well as gravitas, and the ability to form a relationship with each other that carries us along. Right. And so I had actors in mind, but I'm always surprised when I see other talent because I'm a voracious theater attender myself. And Houston is filled with talent. So I have people in mind, but I'm also excited to see who walks in the door.
So you haven't cast yet?
We have not cast that show yet.
Okay, I want to know who it is when you get it.
Okay, I'll let you know.
It's a great show, and it's a great
wonderful
spotlight for actors to come in of a certain age and really
absolutely
own it.
There are too few shows that focus and center middle-aged women. And frankly, who buys our tickets? Who goes to the theater? Who are the backbone of many of our communities? So it's about time we told this story.
Because Late Night Catechism keeps coming back, and I'm sure there's a whole group that just loves all of those.
Absolutely. So
you've got two of them in here. You've got two sister shows.
Yeah, so we have a sister show this August, Sister Las Vegas, which we have not done a whole lot. So it's going to be very exciting to be able to present that one. And then one that for a few years ago we did, Sister Irish Catechism, which is a lot of fun and was written by Denise Fennell. And her first foray, she's portrayed Sister with us for 17 years. And so this was her writing.
Has it been 17 years?
Yes,
wow.
She's been doing Sister for 17 years. And so, but as a writer, we've also produced her work as well. So she's also an accomplished playwright. Mm-hmm. And so this is really a chance to bring that show back, which was loved and had to really end early when we did it before. And our sister shows get a lot of repeat attenders. But also a lot of times people miss them. So it's a chance to bring that one back.
Another one that people love, it's kind of one of your stock and trade. It's the Great American Trailer Park, but it's a Christmas musical.
Yes, exactly. And, I think that it's always really wonderful when we can just laugh and have a good time. Yeah. And I won't quote the title of one of the shows because you'd have to bleep me here on the radio this afternoon. But it is an adult Christmas story that is a lot of fun, and for people who love country and western musicals, it definitely has that going for it, and people who love a little irreverence, but still with heart, it is a show for you.
And I know I'm not doing these in order, but there's such
that's
a
all
great
right.
season. You can go to stageshouston.com to see everything that we're talking about. A really powerful show, and I'm happy to see you folks do it, and I want to see it in the intimate space of stages as the Mountaintop.
Yes.
Tell folks what that one is. I've
so
seen
excited,
it.
so excited about the Mountaintop. So the Mountaintop takes place in the Lorraine Motel on April 3rd, 1968. And for the history buffs out there, they will know that would be Martin Luther King's last night on Earth. Mm-hmm. And he is in his hotel room working on another speech after he's given his famous "I've been to the Mountaintop" speech. And the mysterious maid comes to bring some coffee. And from there, Katori Hall, a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, spins a whole imaginary tale of what was the conversations that man had on the last night on Earth when he becomes aware that it is his last night on Earth. And as serious as it sounds, it is also a very funny play that is full of humanity. And I remember when I first saw it, as I had tears streaming down my eyes, I thought to myself, I was born after Martin Luther King was assassinated, but as an African-American, he always loomed large in my life, that I didn't know it was possible. I loved him more.
Yeah.
Because I got this. Katori Hall created the man and the myth, but at the end, a human who just wanted to be a small-town preacher who wanted a chance to see his wife and his family one last time.
I want to ask you about Once on This Island, but I don't have time because I have to ask about Spamilton. It's not in the new season. It's in this season. It's coming up next month.
In fact, not just next month. It starts performing this Thursday night. This Friday is our first preview. So I have previews this weekend.
Almost to June.
Yes,
Almost
and it
there.
opens next week.
Quickly, for people who have no idea
yes.
what we're talking about.
So,
You've got about 30 seconds.
So Spamilton is a spoof of Hamilton, how Lin-Manuel Miranda rose to write this groundbreaking musical. And if you love Hamilton, it uses the music of Hamilton with all new lyrics. And if you don't know Hamilton, you'll still appreciate it because it's a great piece of musical theater. And if you're a musical theater fan, it references dozens of other musical theater plays or musicals in order to tell the story. So it has something for anybody who, if you love Lin-Manuel Miranda, if you love Hamilton, if you love musical theater, it is a great laugh fest for you.
And I get to do the talk back one night, but
yes.
I don't know the date in front of me, but we'll give it to all of you in a bit. Derek Charles Livingston is the artistic director at Stages Houston. Derek, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
To find out everything we were talking about and so much more, go to stageshouston.com. And that brings us to the end of our show today. Thank you for listening and watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversation and our current obsessions. If you know what your current obsessions are, start sending them in. We'll share them tomorrow. talk@hellohouston.org. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.